Hello, comparative religions, and welcome to our second lesson on Buddhism. In the first lesson, we investigated the history of Buddhism, the origins, where it was founded. It was founded in India. We talked about the central figure of Siddhartha Gautama, who was born into this life of luxury. He goes out into the world when he's 19. He sees examples of suffering. There had been a prophecy he was either going to be a great ruler or a great teacher. He goes out to see the rest of his kingdom and tries meditating because he's very disturbed by these images of suffering. He gets tempted under a Bodhi tree by the demon Mara. He overcomes that temptation and reaches enlightenment. And then we looked at the groups that he reaches out to, and then they in turn spread his teachings around the world, okay? And including Ahsoka, who's a military commander that will spread Buddhism all the way to China and Africa. In this lesson, we are going to get into the specific teachings of Buddhism. Okay. Now, again, as we go through, be sure you are taking your own notes down. I will try to give you a heads up as to what I want you to copy down. Again, you're going to need to keep these, okay, because we're going to have a checkup on all the Asian religions next week, and you want to be sure you have your notes ready to go for that, okay? So let's start here with the first of the major teachings, and that is the denial of a creator God, okay? Buddhists do acknowledge, and if you just want to get the first thing down, denial of a creator God, that's fine. Buddhists do acknowledge existence of spiritual beings, which makes sense. We talked about that last week with the origins of Asian religions and Asian belief systems. We mentioned that one of the things they have in common is the belief in the spirit world. Now, these spirits are not gods in terms of the Western sense, all right? And we talked about that as well. This is also why I think maybe, in my opinion, the Theravadas are probably closer to Buddha's actual teachings than, say, the Mahayanas, because this is the first major belief that there aren't any gods out there, and the Mahayanas are claiming that Buddha has divine qualities almost like a god. Okay, so that's why from the previous lesson, I would say maybe the Theravadas are closer to what Buddha was teaching, but I don't know that for sure. Okay, now the big teachings, and this is what Buddha discovered as he was sitting under the Bodhi tree and he defeats the temptation. The big teachings are the Four Noble Truths, and I want you to get these down. Now, what's interesting about the Four Noble Truths, or what's kind of cool about the Four Noble Truths, is they do make sense. They logically progress. Okay, let's look at them. Okay, the first truth is that suffering exists. All people suffer. Okay, you got to acknowledge that fact. Then the second truth is the reason we suffer is because of desire, which makes sense. Okay, we desire things and we can't always get them, and that causes us to suffer. Or the fact that we desire and we don't want to desire bothers us, and that causes us to suffer. And if you think about it, this is what the temptations were all about, okay? The desire for vengeance, the desire for seduction, okay? The desire for the desire of fear, all right? That fear can cause you to lose sense of your desire, all right? When Buddha was being tempted, this is what he comes up with. And then he's able to defeat that suffering, which leads us to number 3. If you end suffering, you end desire. All right? Like I said, very logical progression. You have to acknowledge suffering exists. You have to figure out what the cause of suffering is, namely desire. And then if you end desire, you end suffering. Okay? Makes sense. And how do we end desire and how do we end suffering? We follow the Eightfold Path to Righteousness. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Before we get to that, though, another major concept. So this is what Buddha discovers as he's meditating, and to be honest with you, this is what I think he brings back to the Songhai and to the Arats and the other disciples. This is what he's teaching them. But the other thing, the third major point in these teachings, and I want you to get this down, is the concept of the middle way. You need to avoid both self-indulgence and self-mortification. Okay? Get that down. You need to avoid both self-indulgence and self-mortification. Indulgence is giving in. Think of it almost as gluttony. And the reason you want to avoid that is because it's degrading. Okay? It's sensual. It's vulgar. It's useless. At the same time, you want to avoid self-mortification. That's extreme fasting, okay? Which is what Buddha did, okay? Buddha fasted. He lived a very, very simplistic life, okay? But oftentimes, if you take it too far, it becomes painful, degrading, and useless again, all right? Kind of the same thing with self-indulgence. So you want to just live a nice middle-of-the-road existence. You don't want to give in too much, and you don't want to deny yourself too much. Just be right in the center. If you follow the middle way, you will gain insight, you will gain knowledge, you will live a pretty calm existence, you will awaken to the enlightenment around you, and eventually you will reach nirvana. Be sure you get that down. Nirvana is freedom from earthly existence. Now, both Buddhists and Hindus believe in a form of reincarnation. And we mentioned briefly at the beginning of the semester that eventually reincarnation gets tiresome. So, for Buddhists, you want to reach that sense of nirvana because that will break the cycle of reincarnation and will free you from earthly existence. Now, part of the way you end desire, part of the way you end suffering, part of the way you follow the middle way is by respecting the Eightfold Path. I want you to get down, you don't have to copy all eight, but get down some of the descriptors of the Eightfold Path. It involves right understanding, okay? Knowledge, that's what it's talking about. Your right knowledge. Right intention, okay? What motivates you, all right? Are you doing things to help others? Or are you doing things just to benefit yourself? That's probably not right intention. Right speech. Are you being kind? Are you being calm? Okay. Right conduct. Are you being kind? Okay. Are you taking care of others? Right occupation. Now, right occupation, of course, occupation is a job. It's not saying certain jobs are better than others. Probably right occupation is what is right for you. Are you using your skills for the right job? Right endeavor. Okay. Do you have the right goals? All right. That's what your endeavor is. Right contemplation. That's thinking. Okay. Contemplation often leads to understanding. All right. And right concentration is your focus on the positives of life. Okay. If you follow these paths, okay, or if you follow these branches to the Eightfold Path, then that will help you stay on the middle way, and that will help you end desire, and that will help you end suffering, and that will help you gain enlightenment, and eventually reach nirvana. And if you think about it, if you can practice all that, you'll be at harmony with yourself, and you'll be at harmony with others, which is what we talked about last week in the origins of Asian religion in the first place. Okay? Now, jumping back to the Mahayana groups, okay? Now remember the Mahayanas are the more liberal thinking of the converts, okay? And I'll be honest with you, Don't worry about copying anything down on this next slide. Okay, I just want to tell you what they are. All right. Um, you had the Madhyamakas. Okay, these have most fully embraced the concept of the middle way, avoiding self-indulgence and self-mortification. You have the Tendais, which are the philosophical form of the practice. This is not really popular because it's very individualistic. Okay, and though you're supposed to spend time meditating and things like that, I mean, think about it. Buddha reached out to people. He reached out to converts. Okay, you depend on others, so that's why there's another reason it's very individualistic. That's another reason it's not popular, is because you depend on your group of believers. You have the Pure Land sect, which is infusing an idea of heaven and hell into the dynamic of Buddhism. Again, that's going to be very, very liberal. Uh, Zen Buddhists rely heavily on meditation and discipline to reveal the true nature of existence. Okay. And then you have Tantriism, which is the most mystic form and is often considered an occult form of Buddhism. Again, because it's mystic, and again because it's kind of secretive. Okay, um, that's why it kind of has an occult status. But these are some of your more liberal thinking groups versus the Theravadas. All right. Which are more conservative and don't see Buddha as a teacher, probably would not accept this idea of heaven and hell. Probably could buy into some of the meditation of the Zen group, but maybe not as strong as the Zen Buddhists believe. Okay. Now let's get back to some more teaching. Just as Buddha started when he came back from gaining enlightenment, there are monasteries today that are geared toward reaching out and converting people. Okay. And then those people are sent out to convert others. Okay. Um, this developed from yearly retreats that occurred during the lifetime of Buddha. I mean, we talked about Buddha comes back, he gets that core group of believers, then that core group reaches out to others, and then that group takes it around the world. Okay. So, and Buddha spent 45 years, the last 45 years of his life, teaching monks and teaching missionaries. So it has its origins back to Buddha. You can find them everywhere. You will find Buddhist monasteries in India. You will find them in China. You will find them in Africa. You'll even find them in the United States. Based on where they're located, that's going to determine their characteristics. Okay, their dress. What is their affiliation with the outside world? Will they allow for technology or not? Okay, there are subtle differences like that that differ based on location. Originally, you were to live a life of poverty. You were supposed to be celibate, okay, which means you did not enter into relationships. If you did, there would be no children, okay, and you kind of wandered from place to place, spreading the religion. Now, this has evolved in more modern times, okay? Not all Buddhist monks are going to be celibate. I think a great portion of them still are, but not all of them will be celibate. The Dalai Lama, who's a practitioner of Buddha, or a practitioner of Buddhism, he also uses technology. He doesn't overindulge in it, but that's certainly not a life of pure poverty either. Okay, I think he's striking a nice middle way kind of existence when it comes to technology and material possessions. Okay, he has like wristwatches and stuff like that, but he's also not living in palatial houses and with many rooms and all kinds of jewels and paintings and stuff like that. That's not a part of it either. Okay, but again, it's going to vary from place to place. Now, since we've got monks, we also have nuns. Now, Buddhism has some interesting views on women. Okay. Basically, there are two main views on women. Either one, they are dangerous. Okay. They're evil. They're weak. They're purveyors of pain. Or they're married. Married women are highly regarded. Okay. So I think what happens over time is people begin to, question this idea. What do you mean? I have to be married to be good? What happens if I don't get married? What happens if my husband passes away? Does that mean I'm evil? So that led to the development of convents. Okay, convents have gained popularity as an alternative for women. If monks can live an existent celibate existence, dedicated to poverty and meditation, stuff like that, women can too. All right, there are strict rules concerning segregation of gender and goals for women. Okay, so again, what do we do with these women that don't necessarily fit into one of these goals or don't have one of these goals that is highly prized, but at the same time, they're not evil, they're not dangerous? So convents have gained kind of in popularity. All right. Now, what about the Buddha? Where do we stand with the Buddha today? There are relics to Buddha. Okay, pieces of his body. There are pieces of his body. Some have been preserved and enshrined in stupas or pagodas. And it is considered proper to take an offering to the stupa as a way to acquire merit from one's existence. Okay, basically, you're paying your respects to the founder of this religion. Again, I think the Theravadas would say it's not because we believe he's divine, but he was the first one. He reached enlightenment first. I mean, that's what Buddha means as the enlightened one. So out of respect for that and out of admiration for that, we go and we visit these relics and we leave offerings to him because he is the founder, not because he's a god or divine in any way, but we're showing our respect to our founder. Mentioned in the first presentation, there are images of Buddha. It is not considered taboo. Taboo is something that is forbidden. It's socially unacceptable. Okay, and some religions like Islam, images of the founder, images of God, Allah, are forbidden. That's not the case with Buddhism. You commonly find little statues of Buddha everywhere in personal homes, in temples. In fact, you will often find a statue of Buddha at home in the shrine to the family ancestors, okay, to the ancestor spirits. You will find them in places of gathering. You will find them in places of business. I mean, a lot of times, if you go into Chinese restaurants or go get your nails done here in the United States, you will find little shrines and you will find little statues of Buddha in these places of business. And again, you will find offerings around them as a source of merit. But once again, it's not because they are worshiping Buddha or they see him as a god. They're leaving these offerings as a sign of respect and as a sign of admiration for the fact that he's the founder and the teachings that he has passed on. Plus, we've already talked about there's this concept of the spirit world out there, and you want to make the spirits happy. So it would make sense to leave offerings at these shrines. Okay. And I mentioned in the last presentation, I'm just going to mention again right quick here, this idea that these statues of the fat Buddha probably not accurate if he lived a life of extreme self-denial and extreme meditation. Okay, he's not going to be, a glutton as we see here. All right, what that represents, the fact he's smiling, the fact that he's heavy, that represents the good life, which is what you will get if you follow the Eightfold Path. You break the cycle of suffering, you break the cycle of desire, you follow that middle way. That's the happiness you can hope to achieve. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, there aren't a lot of holy books for Buddhism, okay? There are specific teachings, and the last thing I want to talk about are some of those specific teachings, okay? Specific prayers. You recite mantras, okay? In fact, a mantra is a recitation. And you begin by saying, homage to him, the blessed one, that's the Buddha, the exalted one, the fully enlightened one. Then you say the three refuges. It's almost like a prayer, okay? But it's not really a prayer, but it's almost like a prayer. It can even be seen as a form of poetry. But here are the three refuges. I go to Buddha as my refuge. I go to the Dharma, which is the law and doctrine, as my refuge, and I go to the Sangha as my refuge. That was that first group of believers, okay? So you mentioned that's kind of a brief history lesson. I go to Buddha, I go to the law, I go to the first group of believers. Then you have 5 precepts, okay? These are 5 things you're going to do with your life to stay on the middle path, okay, or to stay on the middle way. I undertake to abstain from destroying life. I undertake to abstain from taking things not given, stealing. I undertake to abstain from sexual misconduct, okay, adultery. I undertake to abstain from false speech. I undertake to abstain from intoxicants, okay. That could be overeating, that could be over drinking, that also could be narcotics, okay. Basically, it's anything that could kind of poison your body. That's what a toxicant do. You take it internally and it poisons you. You're going to stay away from that. Then you follow it up with 5 more precepts. I undertake to abstain from eating at forbidden times. I undertake to abstain from dancing, singing, and shows. I undertake to abstain from adorning or beautifying myself. I undertake to abstain from using a high or large couch or bed. I undertake to abstain from accepting gold or silver. Okay. Some of those, like abstaining from a high or large couch, again, you want to stay on the middle path, and things like that could be seen as indulgence, and you don't want to overindulge yourself. Okay. So you say these things. This is kind of a commitment to your faith. Like I said, you kind of briefly list the 3 historical groups. You list Buddha, you list the law, and you list that first group of believers. And then you talk about things that you're going to do with your life to stay in the middle way and stay on the eightfold path. We mentioned earlier one of the individualistic groups, the Mahayanas, is often not popular. That's because communal worship is observed. Okay, there is no formal day that's set aside, but Sundays have become kind of tradition. All right, even though there is no exact formal day, a lot of Buddhists gather on Sunday together to do things like recite the mantras and recite the teachings of Buddha. Now, that wraps it up for Buddhism. Okay. Again, be sure you hold on to these notes. Okay. We're going to have a little checkup on this next week. And the rest of the week will be spent moving into our last major Asian religion. We're going to talk about Hinduism. And Hinduism is vastly different from Buddhism and Confucianism, Taoism or Taoism, and Shintoism. Okay, in that it is polytheistic or Hintoistic. Hintoistic. All right, and we'll talk about what that is in the next series of lessons.